Hello and welcome back. This is Miss Andrea with the Lane Arts Council doing lesson 4 on drawing from your life. And today what we're going to do is a project that is a culmination project. What that means is that it is going to take lessons, little bits and pieces from all the lessons that we've done so far and put it together in one project. So if you haven't had an opportunity yet to watch 1, 2, or 3, lessons 1, 2, or 3, please go back and take a look at those now because we're going to be using some of those elements from those lessons in today's project. All right, so our project today is animal portraits, and we're going to start by having you gather your materials. So our materials, the things that you'll need is you'll need a white piece of paper. And if you could just get a piece of copy paper, that's fine. You want to have a pencil, colored pencils, or if you don't have colored pencils, crayons would work as well. You also want to have a nice eraser, either on the end of your pencil, or you might want to have gum erasers to help you erase. And you want to have a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, then you could use a straight edge, like a book, like the spine of a book. And then also a pencil sharpener because you want your pencils to have a nice point. So if you could gather those materials now, that would be great. And then we can get started. If you have your materials already and maybe you need to sharpen your pencil, now's a good time to do it as you listen to the instructions. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at student examples of the animal portrait projects. So I'm going to move this up actually so that you can see better. And I'm going to use the pedestal to do so, because that will help me keep it and point out important things that are interesting about the design. Okay, well, the first thing I want to point out to everybody is the frame or border, okay? Well, actually, even before the frame or border, I want you to look at this portrait's orientation. And there's a clue word in there to help you decide how you're going to hold your paper, okay? I want you to notice that the paper is oriented straight up and down or vertically. This is the portrait as opposed to landscape. And so today we will be holding and orienting our papers so that they are vertically oriented straight up and down so that we can really use that portrait to the best format possible. So that's the first thing you're going to notice. The second thing you're going to notice is a frame or border. Does everyone see a frame or border around the outside? This is the background here. This yellow part is the background, but I want you to look at this really cool border that has some contour lines, some geometric shapes. This is something that we talked about in lesson 1, is line drawing using contours and geometric shapes and also concentric shapes. So if you haven't seen that lesson, please go back and watch it. And then on the inside, you have the portrait of, this one's a little anime dog. And in the background, there is a skyscape, which is what we did in lesson 3, which was shading with the skyscape project that we did. I'm going to flip through some other examples. And you can just take a look at those things that I mentioned in the first one as you look. One of the things I'd like to point out is that you can feel free to use whimsy with your drawings. What whimsy means is you can draw your animals to have personalities or maybe even personify them, which means make them kind of like people. For example, here in this one, okay, so this is being a little bit difficult and isn't sliding. I'm going to make it smaller and try. There we go. Well, this one here is is a very simple goat, and it looks like a goat. But there are others that are a little bit more whimsical, like this one, for example. Or if you take a look at this one, this is a llama that appears to be a yoga instructor or some kind of instructor or radio personality that is using a microphone. So that's what I mean by whimsy. It's kind of playful. And these projects are meant to be fun. So we're going to be giving a lot of permission to add these fun little elements to our animals. Okay, so sorry about this little technical difficulty. Here we have a little anime dog. And here, this is one of my favorite examples of whimsy, because here you have a unicorn with a headset and musical notes in the background. Take a look here. You can see that this artist, this student artist, incorporated the line drawing from the first lesson to make her very interesting border. Okay, so those are just some examples. Now, I want you to take a moment to come up with your own personal examples, okay? So we're going to do a moment where we take a deep breath. So go ahead and sit up straight in your chair and take a deep breath through your nose and exhale out your mouth. Then do it again and close your eyes. So deep breath in through your nose, out your mouth. Close your eyes down. And I want you to think about an animal that you love, an animal that inspires you. I want you to think for a moment about what this basic shape of your animal's ears are. Are they round? Are they pointed like a triangle? What simple shapes would you be able to draw to convey the animal's ears, their mouth, their eyes? Okay, take a moment to think about that. Also, think about ways you can make your animal more your own. Do you want to think about colors? Do you want to add anything fun, like butterfly wings, or maybe glasses, or a funny hat? What can you add to your animal to make it your own and make it more fun for you to create? And when you've got your idea, go ahead and open your eyes, and you're going to take your 8.5 by 11 copy paper, okay? So we're going to take this, and because we only have a short amount of time, I'm going to have you fold your paper in half so that you're working with a smaller field of view, okay? Sometimes it can be easier and not so daunting or intimidating if you're working smaller. So here we have the copy paper. Right now it is going to be held landscape, and you're going to take the ends, you're going to fold your paper, and you're going to try to line up the corners here. And then when you line them up to the best of your ability, and you can maybe leave it on the surface of the tabletop or wherever you're working to make it easier to fold it. And then once you fold it, you're going to have two halves making a whole. And one of your halves is going to be your field of view. Remember, when we say field of view, as artists, what we're talking about is the area that you see, okay? I'm going to move the desk down just a little bit. Perfect. So with the field of view, we're creating a half page, okay? All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to, and I'm going to adjust this camera just a little bit because I want my entire half page to be in the field of view. All right. And I may just actually need to take it off the pedestal to do this. All right, so this is where you're going to use your ruler, if you have one, okay, to make a border or frame around your paper. Now, for some of you, this may be the first time you've used your ruler. And if that's the case, do know that sometimes measuring and using rulers can be tricky, but I'm going to hopefully give you some tips that will help. For those of you who have done this before, just see how you can improve and maybe challenge yourself to do lines that are straighter and more even. All right, so to make it a little bit more simple, what I am going to do is I'm just going to use the width of the ruler to create the borders around the perimeter of your paper. Okay, so what that means is I'm carefully lining up the end of my ruler with the end of the paper. And it's helpful because you're going to need to hold that ruler down in place so that when you draw that line, it doesn't move. So I know you have little fingers, but try to spread your fingers out so that you are pressing down on the ruler from this long space, okay? So you want to spread your fingers out as best you can. And then it also helps to do a very light line and not press so hard, because if you make a mistake, you can easily erase it. But also if you press lightly, it's less likely to move your ruler, okay? So you're just going to go ahead, make sure your fingers aren't sticking out over the ruler, or else you won't be able to make that nice line. So you're going to go ahead and do one line. And remember, when you do drawing, it is often helpful to move your paper, okay? 2, and this is just the thickness of the ruler that I'm using, okay? So I'm lining the ruler, the end of the ruler up with the end of the paper. And then now here I have a very long expanse, so I'm going to do the best I can to stretch fingers. And then very lightly do your lines. And last one, all 4 sides. Okay, now you have the start of a border or frame to make your drawing very much like a portrait and to add some interesting shapes. If you like what you've done and you like the lines, you can go back and you can darken the line with a pencil, or if you have a black marker, you could also go back and do the lines with black marker to make them stand out, okay? If you want to have these boxes in the corners, you can leave them. Otherwise, at this point, you can go back and take your eraser and take them off. It's up to you, okay? I kind of like those boxes, so I'm going to leave them. Now, just like we did in lesson 1 with the contour drawings, we had the option of doing simple shapes to make our drawings interesting. You want to have a border that has some designs, but you also want to leave some space so that you are not having too much of a busy design. If your design is busy, it means there's too many lines and your eye kind of gets confused about what to look at. Actually, you know, it's better to use the ruler if you're doing it in marker instead of freehanding. So you can always go ahead back. Now that you've had the practice of doing it with the pencil and you've done a good job, then you want to go back and use the marker just to get those lines a little bit straighter. All right, so now from here, you can start using your creativity and anything that you've picked up from the first contour line lesson that I've done with you before. So I'm going to do some simple shapes in the corners here. I like the spiral motif, so I'm going to add spirals in here. Okay. And of course, you can do whatever you want. You want to think about maybe your animal and how these shapes that you're doing relates to the animal. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of what we did in the third section of lesson 1 with the lines. We did the lines close together. It's the follow the line project that we did. Okay, so this is an example. So I'm just making lines and then I'm following them with some space in between to create some interesting shapes. All right, and if you want, you could add some simple shapes in the inside of those lines. You can do whatever you want. Just be creative and have fun with it. Okay, so something to keep in mind is a term we call symmetry or asymmetry. If I want my drawing to be symmetrical, that means whatever I do on this side of the drawing, on this half, I will do on the other half. So if I wanted symmetry, I would try to do this drawing over here to the best of my ability. So I'm turning my paper to make it easier for me to do this, and I'm going to do more of the follow the line. Of course, if you don't want to do symmetry and you want to have asymmetry, then you don't have to have the same shapes on either side of the drawing. They can be totally different, and that's absolutely 100% wonderful. That is going to be what we call an asymmetrical design. All right, pedestal down so you can see what I'm doing. And actually, I'm going to raise my table up. Oh, that's not going to help. Okay. It's always fun to work with this new technology and have the experience of doing something for the first time. All right. So from here, you can do geometric designs if you like. Geometric designs like triangles, or you could maybe you want to do circular designs or simple shapes like ovals or rectangles. It's absolutely up to you. I'm going to do some triangles because I love the triangle shape. And I'm going to do something that's called concentric triangles, which means that I'm making lines inside of my triangles. This is known as concentric. Okay, when you have lines on the inside that are the same basic shape, just slightly smaller. Okay, so you can have fun playing with that. And there we go. Remember, you don't want to make it too busy, but you want to have fun with it and you want to make it interesting. Okay, so just go ahead and maybe finish up. Finish up with a couple more strokes, and you can always come back and do more to your border after this lesson is over. Okay, so let's have you finish up in a couple of seconds, and then we'll move on to creating your animal. All right. Okay. Creating your animal. So you had a moment of mindfulness where you closed your eyes and thought about what animal you wanted to draw. One of the things that is important is that when you draw a portrait, and you may have noticed with the examples that I showed earlier, it's generally a picture of the head and up. Sometimes it's the shoulders up. That's what we call portrait. And you may think, oh, Miss Andrea, why are you limiting me to the head and up? I really want to do the entire body of my animal. And I would say, well, that's fine. If you really want to do it, you probably, I'm not going to say you can't, you would need to use a landscape orientation, most likely, to get the entire body in. But I just want to say sometimes getting certain limitations in your art making can actually help you be more creative. Now, that may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but if you have too much of a wide open sometimes having too much like wide open choices can freeze you and can make it very difficult to move forward. So that's why I'm going to encourage everybody to stick with the portrait project and just really focus on the head, because it can be very difficult to draw animals with their entire bodies. And the other beautiful thing about focusing on just the head is you can use simple shapes to convey what you are envisioning in your head. So now we're going to put this marker aside and we're going to take up our pencil again. Remember, you want to hold your pencil as close to the bottom by the tip as possible so that you have dexterity. And when you start, you're going to start by using a light touch, and you're going to do very simple line. This is called sketching, and the first part of sketching is known as blocking. So you're just blocking out the area. So if you take a look here, I have this field of view now because I've already done a border. So now the field of view for my animal portrait is going to be right here. I want to make sure that I have my actual animal character using up the majority of this space. You probably want to leave some space at the top as well as at the sides for coloring in later. But remember, it's important to fill up this shape or field of view as much as you can without going overboard. Okay, that's number one. Number two is you can use simple shapes to draw your animal's portrait. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very light touch, and I know I'm going to do a cat. I love cats. So I'm going to do just a very light line here. And when you block, when you sketch and you block, you do not do details at first. Blocking in just simply means is that you are figuring out the size and the proportions of your animal, okay? The size and proportions. So this might be hard to see because it's such a faint line. So I'm going to put it up on well, it's still hard to see. So I've got my basic oval shape for the head, and my cat has cat ears, which are pointy. We know that that simple shape can be a triangle, right? And then I have a little bit of a neck and shoulders. These are very simple shapes, okay? Once you've got your simple shapes and you have what's known as the contour, which is the outside of your animal, then you can go back and add detail, okay? So remember, you're just going to stick with what's simple. And you can do things like add a collar, or you might want to add a little necklace. That's actually more detailed. So you probably want to start with things like the eyes, okay? So when you do eyes can be round, eyes can be oval, or eyes can be football shaped. I'm going to do a football shape eye, okay? Now, when I do a football shape eye, what helps me make that a little bit more easily is to, number one, turn my paper slightly. And number two, to do it in 2 strokes. When we say 2 strokes, it means you do 1 stroke and lift up your pencil and then do the second stroke. I find that it's hard to make a nice oval or like football shape without lifting the pencil up. So there's really no pressure to do it in 1 stroke. Do 2 strokes to make it easier for you, okay? And then you can go back and add your detail. You can add the inside of your eyes. Remember, eyes have the outside shape, the iris, which is the colored part, and the pupil, which is the black part. And you can do whiskers, you can do stripes, you can do, that's funny, you can do spots, okay? Just go ahead and be creative. Once you've got the basic shapes and you like them, you can go back and you can color them in with your black marker to make them stand out. All right? All right. So go ahead and finish that. Get to a good place to stop. So just make your last line, and you can come back to this part later. I want to briefly talk about color. Okay, so if you have colored pencils, I encourage you to use the colored pencils. Make sure they have a nice point on them. And you want to choose a handful of colors that work well together. All right, so I'm going to choose some of these colors, and I'm going to do a shading in color, which is similar to what I did in the last lesson on skyscapes. When you shade with color, you want to hold your pencil at the end, and you want to use not the tip, but the side. Okay, so I'm going to make a gradual shading in here where I use first I'm going to start by doing light color. I'm pressing very gently. I'm not pressing hard. Okay. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to press harder in certain areas. So I'm layering the color to give it this shaded color, kind of like we did with the skyscapes. Okay. So some areas can be shaded darkly and some can be shaded lightly. You can go back with other contrasting colors and perhaps make some really neat color blending. Okay, just to have fun with it. Now we're going to need to take a break and move on from here. So even if you're not done, go ahead and clean up your spot for now, or just leave it for a moment and you can come back to it after our final activity, which is going to be a mindfulness activity. Okay, so let's have you again sit up straight in your chair, take a deep breath through your nose, exhale out your mouth. Now open your eyes and take a look at what you have done. Take a moment to reflect on the choices, the artistic choices that you made, and take a moment to think about what you really liked about the project. Was it fun? Did you learn something? Maybe you can come up with a word or phrase of something that really appealed to you about this project. And if you feel comfortable, share with a trusted adult, because it can really enhance your learning to share. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Miss Andrea signing out. This has been a wonderful module on drawing from your life, and I hope you keep creating. So if you would like, go back to your drawing, and I know there was a lot that we didn't do because of our time, but you are invited to finish this up and also go back and watch any of the videos that we've done so far so that you can be as creative and draw from your life as exuberantly as you hope to. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day.